Hello, good morning, you guys. Happy Sunday. I hope you all have been enjoying your weekend so far. I wanted to come to you guys to talk about a case, okay? And the case I want to talk to you about involves a monk who raped and impregnated a 15-year-old. At the time of the incident, the girl was 15. She is a Jane Doe, so we don't know her name, okay? But she was raped by a monk, okay, over in Chicago at a Buddhist temple over in Chicago. Give me 1 second. Let me get the name of the temple real quick. Do I have it? I thought I had it. I do. I do have the name. Let me give you guys the name of the what Buddhist temple he. Okay, so it was the Wat Dharma the Marm Thai Buddhist temple over in Chicago, right? And it's on West 75th Street. And she was raped and impregnated by a monk from this Buddhist temple. So years went by after this incident. And of course, she has this child. And I don't know if she was falling short of support. I don't know what she did all of those years prior to that. But she was falling short of some kind of support or whatever for the child. And so she went to the Buddhist temple in order for her to try to get relief, get some money to help her take care of the child, right? So let me put this on the screen. I put this is an image of the Buddhist temple in Chicago where the monk was doing his monking at, right? And this this is an image, right, that I'm just saying of the woman because we don't have. I do have an image I'm going to show you of the monk who did this, but this is just an anime image, right, of them two. So he I don't know whether he was giving her some counsel or I don't know what he was doing and how he had started having interactions with this woman because monks have a very, very, very strict disciplinary code, right? That they can't, it's certain things they cannot do. And so I don't know what happened where he was in proximity with this woman, but he rapes her, impregnates her. Years later, she goes to the Buddhist temple in order to try to get some type of support for the child. They deny her support. And so she goes and retains an attorney. And she retains the attorney to try to help her to get some money for what happened and to take care of her child. The attorney helps her to get money, and he helped her to get the sum of $1.2 million. Okay, that was the settlement that he helped her get from the Buddhist temple. They paid this out to her. Okay, so initially, the reason why she went to go see an attorney was because when she went to the Buddhist temple to try to have this conversation with them, she was told by officials at the Buddhist temple that they wanted to take custody of the Buddha baby. Okay, this is the little Buddha baby. They wanted to take custody of the little Buddha baby. Okay, and just leave the baby with them, and then they plan to move. I guess the daddy, they would have him take care of her at the Buddhist temple, and she would grow into this nice young Buddhist baby, Buddhist girl, Buddha girl, right? And so the mother, she wasn't down with that. So she went and retained an attorney. And she retained this attorney, and then the attorney helped her to get a settlement of $1.2 million as a result. Okay. So we are going to read an article from Courthouse News dated back to September 16th of 2010 when this woman initially filed this complaint. Let me see if I could get this on the screen for you guys. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so this article was originally documented, published on September 16th of 2010 by Kevin Coninger, and this is a courthouse news service. Okay, and the article reads: a woman claims a Buddhist monk sexually assaulted and impregnated her when she was a minor. And when she asked the monk's temple to financially help for her daughter, she was told that she should sign Sarah over to the temple as an offer she refused. Jane Doe sued the Thai Buddhist temple and Camnong Boa-Ubol in Cook County Court. According to the complaint, in July 1998, Camnong Boa-Ubol, while dressed in the orange robes associated with the Thai Buddhist temple, approached her, then 15 years of age, and asked if she wanted to assist the temple by doing cleanup work for compensation, and if she was interested in learning about the temple. Jane agreed to go with Boa and entered the temple. During her visit, she says, Boa talked with Jane about the teachings of the temple and the promises that the temple had to offer for those connected with it, and that because of those discussions, Jane repeatedly came to the temple for guidance and instructions and compensation for her cleanup duties. The complaint continues. On numerous occasions between about July 19th of 1998 and May 19th of 1999 at the temple, Boa committed a sexual assault and battery on Jane Doe. As a result of the sexual assault and batteries committed by Boa, Jane Doe became pregnant. She gave birth to Sarah, who has physical disabilities according to the complaint. Now, let me stop real quick right there. I happen to think that Jane Doe also has some disabilities. We're going to find out why I'm saying that later on in this live, okay? But I think Jane Doe probably has some disabilities too. So I don't know if her child's disabilities are associated with some disabilities that she may have and may have passed on or what. But she gets pregnant by this monk. She has this disabled child. She goes to the temple to ask for them to help with support. So this is the point that we're at. So, she says, as a result of the sexual assault and battery committed by Boa, Jane Doe became pregnant. She gave birth, okay, so we read that, birth to Sarah, who has physical disabilities, according to the complaint. Doe claims that throughout the course of her work, the temple failed to supervise Boa's contact with a minor and exposed Jane Doe to unsupervised contact with Boa, wherein he was able to sexually abuse her. The temple is on West 57th Street in Chicago. Doe says she went there in 2006 to request financial help for herself and her daughter, Sarah, and that she saw a photo of Boa hanging on the wall. She claims that she showed a female agent of the temple her daughter, Sarah, and was told that she should sign Sarah over to the temple. Jane refused. Doe seeks damages for sexual assault and battery, gender violence, emotional distress, and damages under the Family Expense Act. She is represented by Bo Brindley. That's the first article that we examine. Okay, so she sues them. She retains Bo Brindley to represent her. Okay, now as a result, she ends up getting awarded $1.2 million from this whole incident occurring. But it didn't stop there, because Boa ends up on criminal charges. He is criminally charged. And as a result, he is sentenced to 15 years in jail for the assault. So we are going to read the article from CBS News. Give me 1 second. I'm going to get that up for you guys. Share screen. Okay. So here is the article from CBS News. It was published on September 30th of 2013. And the title of the article says, Buddhist monk sentenced to 15 years for sexual assault. And it reads, a Buddhist monk has been sentenced to 15 years in prison after pleading guilty to sexual assault. For sexually assaulting a teenage girl for 2 years at a southwest suburban temple. Camnong Boa-Ubol, 62, pleaded guilty to 1 count of aggravated criminal sexual assault for assaulting the girl on numerous occasions at a Buddhist temple in Stickney Township, according to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. Boa-Ubol lived and worked at the Wat Dharma Temple. That's what I showed you. I think they may have moved because the address looks kind of different from what they said it was at the time that this incident occurred. But he worked at the Wat Dharma Temple when the assault took place. A statement from the Cook County Sheriff's Office at the time of his arrest said, the assault began in 1998 when the girl was 13. Prosecutors said in a statement, Boa asked the girl to do work outside the temple in exchange for money, then later invited the girl into a trailer on the temple grounds where he sexually assaulted her, the statement said. The attacks, which also resulted in the girl becoming pregnant and giving birth in early 2000, went on for about 2 years. The girl did not report them because Boa had threatened her and her family, the statement read. A paternity test confirmed Boa was the father of the girl's child. In a 2009 lawsuit, the victim and her daughter claimed Boa sexually assaulted and battered her at the temple between July 1998 and May of 1999. The suit claimed the woman was a temple worker and potential member when Boa approached her dressed in the orange robe associated with the temple. A picture of Boa was hanging on the wall when she came to the temple for guidance, instruction, and compensation for cleanup duties. Boa left this Stickney temple at some point after 1999, and investigators learned he had gone to the Wat Bhadhavapasana temple. I might be saying all of that wrong, y'all, but whatever, in Long Beach, California, but had been removed from that temple. He was arrested in May 2022 in Anchorage, Alaska, where he was working as a dishwasher, police said. Okay, so that's the end of that article. So he pleads guilty. He is given 15 years in prison. She's awarded $1.2 million as a result for damages and support of her child that he impregnated her with. And Bo Brindley helped her to secure this settlement. Okay, so what are we talking about here? What is this conversation about, right? Well, Bo Brindley was involved in representing her uncle in a case. The uncle that he was responsible for representing in a case is also the uncle that was put in place by Bo Brindley to oversee this $1.2 million on Jane Doe's behalf. Okay. Now, this is the reason why I said because Jane Doe's identity is hidden to protect her, because at the time of the crime, she was a child, right? So her name is not known. We don't know her name, but we do have her uncle's name. And I'm about to read some documents or some things relating to her uncle's case. But her uncle ends up having some kind of good morning, Tears. Her uncle ends up having some kind of control over this money, right? And it doesn't say why. And so because I know that it's saying that her daughter had some disabilities, I'm thinking that Jane must have had some type of disabilities to where she needed someone to oversee her affairs, right? And so her uncle by way of Bo Brindley, her attorney, was put in place to oversee this $1.2 million settlement that Jane had been awarded. Okay? Now, I'm going to read the final thing. Well, wait a minute. Hold on one second. Let me not read that yet. I want to read. So her uncle ends up involved in a criminal case involving firearms and drugs. He had a food truck, and he ends up in this case. Her uncle's name is Terry Ferguson. Okay. Now let me see something really quick, you guys. I'm gonna see if I can share something with you guys. Okay, so this is the Buddhist monk here who did the raping of her when she was 15, who impregnated her. Okay, this is a Buddhist monk. Of course, we know this is Bo Brindley. He represented her to help her get this $1.2 million settlement. And then from what information was gathered from authorities, the Buddhist monk Boa ends up prosecuted as a result of his criminal acts in the series of events. And he pleads guilty. He's sentenced to 15 years. The Buddhist temple paid the Jane Doe $1.2 million. And then Bo helps to set up a situation where this man, who is Jane Doe's uncle, Terry Ferguson, becomes the person who is overseeing this $1.2 million settlement. Okay? But Ferguson, pictured here, commits some crimes. And the crimes that he commits involve firearms, drugs, and he was distributing these things out of a food truck that he owned. Okay? And as a result of the investigation, they began to find out that Terry Ferguson has swindled his niece of the $1.2 million settlement that she received. Okay? That he left her with no money. Nothing. She was driving around an old beat up car that constantly needed to be worked on while he had pictures on social media of him living a lavish lifestyle. Okay? And so the investigators, while investigating him for his other crimes, they find this out about what happened with the niece. And they go to the niece in order to try to get some assistance with his investigation. Okay, now before I read all of those details, I want to read you guys. Let me stop screen sharing all that. We're going to put the little Buddha baby back on the stage for a second, okay? This is the little Buddha baby. Okay. So before we go to that, I want to read something else about Ferguson's case so we can get some more details behind what happened when the cops raided Terry Ferguson's house. Okay. Give me 1 second. So we are going to read this motion to suppress evidence, okay, that was filed. It was denied. It was filed. Now, the person who was representing Terry Ferguson in his criminal case is none other than Bo Brindley. Okay? So, the motion reads, it says United States of America versus Terry Ferguson. This is a motion to suppress evidence. Okay? The motion is denied. But we are going to read the motion. The judge is Matthew Kennelly, okay? So it says, the memorandum opinion in order, it says, defendant Terry Ferguson, who is charged with narcotic offenses, has moved to exclude evidence that was obtained as a result of a search of his home and vehicle. The court previously made an oral ruling which incorporates in full and memorializes the ruling in writing in this memorandum opinion. Just before 6 o'clock a.m. on October 30th, 2018, law enforcement agencies went to the home of Terry Ferguson and his family in the Willowbrook, Illinois. They were armed with a warrant for Ferguson's arrest on charge of conspiracy to distribute narcotics that had been filed on October 29th. The agent also had a warrant also issued on October 29th, authorizing them to seize and search Ferguson's cell phone. What they did not have was a warrant to search his home. An application for such a warrant was in the works, but it had not yet been filed. Over 20 ATF agents and Illinois State Police officers arrived at Ferguson's home to execute the arrest warrant. The event can be described with considerable precision because, unbeknownst to the agents at the time, they were being video recorded on cameras inside Ferguson's home. The agents knocked on the front door at 5:59 a.m. Ferguson's minor daughter answered. Agents pulled her outside and entered the home en masse. They encountered Ferguson immediately after entering and took him into custody by no later than 6 o'clock a.m. It gives the seconds, but 6 o'clock, 33 seconds, I guess. He was taken out of the house just before 6:07 a.m. The agents conducted what the government contends was a protective sweep of the home. Rather than using euphemisms, the court will summarize what the video shows. The agent went upstairs into Ferguson's bedroom and looked around. Then they kicked in the door of another upstairs bedroom where Ferguson's son and grandson were sleeping. Then they returned to Ferguson's bedroom, even though they had already ascertained it was clear. They also went into the basement where they found another of Ferguson's sons who had been sleeping there. By no later than 6:04 a.m., the agents had gone through the entire home, and all of the home's occupants had been located and brought to the main floor. The agents, however, did not stop there. After securing all of the occupants, they returned to the basement for several minutes. They went into the garage and looked around, in particular conducting an extended examination of a riding lawnmower. They returned again to Ferguson's upstairs bedroom and looked around for a third time. They returned and searched in the other upstairs bedrooms that they had entered previously. And they returned yet again to Ferguson's bedroom and continued to look around. Evidently not satisfied, the agents went back into Ferguson's bedroom 3 more times after this. An hour later, about 7:25 a.m., again a little before 7:45 a.m., and again at 9:12 a.m., when the primary ATF case agent, Chris Labno, entered Ferguson's bedroom and looked around for about 3.5 minutes. Meanwhile, Ferguson had been taken from the property just after 6 a.m. within a few minutes after he was taken into custody. His wife, Cherie Ferguson, remained in the home on the ground floor, as did the home's other occupants. Agents contend that Ms. Ferguson was told at the outset that she could leave if she wanted. Ms. Ferguson squarely denies this. She states that she was told she had to sit at a table and not move, and that she was told she had to remain there to be interviewed by a particular agent who did not arrive until 8 a.m. See docket number 186. Ferguson's son, Trace Ferguson, also states that they were told to sit and not move, and that his mother was told she could not leave and had to remain there to speak to a particular agent. See docket number 187. At one point, while Miss Ferguson was waiting for the other agents to arrive, she went upstairs with 2 agents and retrieved Ferguson's cell phone. Miss Ferguson states that this was a result of the agent directing me to go and get them my husband's phone. Docket number 186. The agents say in their report that earlier after they told Mr. Ferguson they had a search warrant for his cellular telephone. Docket number 161-1 at 3. He told them it was on or next to his bed. Later, the agents say, an agent told Miss Ferguson about the warrant and what her husband had said about the phone. And an agent then followed Miss Ferguson as she went upstairs to the bedroom that Terry slept in and pointed out his cellular telephone. ID at 4. This is not quite accurate. What the video shows is that Miss Ferguson went upstairs, sandwiched between the two agents, one in front of her and one behind. They entered the bedroom, and Miss Ferguson retrieved the phone and gave it to the agents. Moreover, as indicated earlier, Miss Ferguson maintains that the agents directed her to get the phone and that this was not the consensual event suggested by the agent's narrative in their report. In the meantime, attention was also focused on a GMC truck parked in the driveway of the home. An agent Lamb a report summarizing the events of October 30th. Prepared a little under 3 weeks later, he described the event thusly. In short, according to the agents, things happened in the following sequence. They asked if Miss Ferguson would consent to a search of the truck and explained she could refuse. Miss Ferguson agreed to a search. Agent then provided her with a consent form, read it out loud, and again explained that she had a right to refuse. Miss Ferguson then signed the form. The agent then signed it as witnesses. Miss Ferguson then got her keys and opened the truck, and the agent then conducted a search of the truck and recovered various items. That's not what actually happened. Although the security camera video does not include sound, the actual sequence of events is more or less the opposite of what the agent described in their report. In particular, the consent form was not brought out until the end of the process, after the agent had finished searching the truck. More specifically, the video reflects that agents and Miss Ferguson went to the truck. No forms or documents were shown or signed. Miss Ferguson went in through the passenger side, presumably to retrieve her pills. The agent went into the driver's side at essentially the same time, and the agent remained in the car, searching it for some period. It was only after this that an agent produced what appeared to be a clipboard with a document on it, which Miss Ferguson signed on the hood of the truck. It is readily apparent from the video alone that the agent's report does not get it right regarding the search of the truck. In the report, the agent claimed they had both verbal and written consent to a search of the truck before it was conducted. The latter contention is plainly wrong, and the former contention is suspect, given the falsity of the agent's written account of the sequence of events, and Mrs. Ferguson's contention that she was not free to leave, i.e., that she was in custody. See, e.g., United States versus the case law information. See general and then another case law, okay? Where the government intending to use evidence obtained from the truck, the court would need to conduct a hearing to determine whether the search was conducted pursuant to voluntary consent. At argument on the motion, however, the government disavowed any intention to use against Ferguson any evidence obtained as a result of the search of the truck. For that reason, the parties' factual dispute is immaterial to the court's determination of the motion to suppress. The government similarly disavowed any use at trial of evidence regarding the riding lawnmower that the investigating agents examined when they searched Ferguson's garage. Apparently, the lawnmower is claimed to have been stolen in Wisconsin. As far as the seizure of the phone is concerned, the agent had a warrant that authorized them to do that. What they did not have at the time was a warrant that authorized them to search the home to find the phone. This quite plainly did not deter them from searching the home anyway. Ferguson contends this continued search violated the Fourth Amendment. The government maintains that what the agent did amounted to an authorized protective sweep, but that contention is not sustainable based on the video evidence. Back up a few steps, the agents were unquestionably authorized to enter Ferguson's home to effectuate the arrest warrant, and then they provide case law. But the arrest warrant did not authorize law enforcement to conduct a general search of Ferguson's home, and then they provide more case law. A warrantless search of a home, which is what the video shows the agent did, is unconstitutional unless it is justified by exigent circumstances or some other exception to the Fourth Amendment warrant requirement, and then they provide case law. In this case, there was no exigent circumstances authorizing a search of Ferguson's home. Instead, the government relies on the protective sweep rule, and then they provide established in Maryland v. Bowie. Under the rule, law enforcement officers conducting a lawful arrest inside a home may, as a precautionary matter and without probable cause or reasonable suspicion, look in closets and other spaces immediately adjoining the place of arrest for which an attack could be immediately launched. But this does not authorize a full-blown search of the entire house for evidence of the crime for which the arrest was made. It was on that basis that the court in Bowie distinguished Chimmel versus California, which limited a search incident to an in-home arrest under a warrant to the arrestee's person and the area from within which the arrestee might have obtained a weapon. Rather, what the Fourth Amendment permits is a properly searching officer possesses a reasonable belief based on specific and articulable facts that the area to be swept harbors an individual posing a danger to those on the arrest scene. Even if Bowie had authorized the agents to conduct the sweep of the entire house and garage, and even after they quickly removed Ferguson from the premises and put him in a police vehicle, a few minutes after their entry into the home, it in no way authorizes them to continue to search the house, including repeatedly searching Ferguson's bedroom after they had secured the premises. And even though the agents were permitted to secure the premises while awaiting the search warrant that by that point had been or was about to be applied for, and they provide case law for that, that did not authorize them to do any searching of Ferguson's home in the expectation that a warrant was forthcoming. That said, however, the agents did not acquire Ferguson's cell phone via their impermissible continued searching of his home after completing the protective sweep, nor did they acquire it in that way any other evidence that they intend to use against Ferguson at trial. Rather, the agents evidently acquired the phone via Miss Ferguson after they either asked her or told her to go get it. There is a factual dispute over whether her retrieval of the phone was voluntary or compelled. Ferguson contends it was compelled, and the video evidence as well as Ms. Ferguson's statements tend to support this. She says she was not permitted to leave with as many as 24 agents swarming around the home, which would mean she was detained or in custody. She says she was directed to go get the phone. The video evidence reflects that she was effectively led upstairs by the agents to get it, and the agents' description in their report of how they went upstairs misstates what the video evidence shows. Again, however, this dispute is not material to resolution of Ferguson's motion to suppress. The reason is the inevitable discovery doctrine, which allows for the admission of evidence that would have been discovered even without the unconstitutional source. In this case, the search warrant later obtained for Ferguson's home was untainted by the initial illegality. When the agent impermissibly exceeded the proper scope of a protective sweep and conducted a general and warrantless search of Ferguson's home, and when they allegedly compelled Ms. Ferguson to retrieve Ferguson's cell phone, the following state of affairs existed. This is sufficient to show that the inevitable discovery doctrine saves the admissibility of the cellular phone and its content despite the agent's inappropriate conduct. Ferguson says that the agents exploited their presence in the home while awaiting the search warrant and argues, citing United States v. Madrid, that the flagrancy of their misconduct should preclude application of the inevitable discovery doctrine. The Seventh Circuit, however, has rejected Madrid in this regard. See the United States v. Huskisson, and that decision is binding on this court. For these reasons, the court concluded that the factual dispute raised by Ferguson are immaterial to the motion to suppress, because the government has disavowed usage of anything obtained via the search of Ferguson's GMC truck, as well as the riding lawnmower, and because the inevitable discovery doctrine precludes suppression of evidence obtained via the agent's impermissible searching of Ferguson's home or their seizure of his cell phone. The court denies this motion to suppress. The clerk is also directed to terminate Ferguson's motion to modify conditions without prejudice is moot. And that is the end of that complaint. So I wanted to read that to give you guys some idea of what took place the day that they went to go arrest Terry Ferguson. Now, like I said, Terry Ferguson is the uncle of the Jane Doe in the case where she was raped by this monk, and she got this $1.2 million settlement as a result. And so when they went to arrest Terry Ferguson, the main thing to do was to try to suppress and get rid of all of the evidence based on technicalities, right? And so that's what they attempted to do, but that did not work. And so Terry Ferguson was up a creek, right? He was up the creek, and he had a reason, like if he had some kind of additional information on something else happening, that might help him out in this case and maybe help him to get a little less time, right? And so we talked about this money, this $1.2 million that Terry Ferguson was overseeing for his niece, but he was misappropriating funds from that $1.2 million. He was given legal authority over those funds by legal processes that had been put in place by Bro Brindley, who was the attorney that was representing his niece at the time. Okay, and who helped her to gain this settlement. So now we have another possible situation in another probe, right? Because remember I told you guys, that there was some information that Terry Ferguson may have that the investigators in the case thought might help Terry Ferguson in his legal troubles. And it was connected to this $1.2 million that he had spent up of his niece's money. Okay? So we're going to go to this next article. Give me 1 second. Okay. So this article is from the Chicago Tribune. I'm trying to see when it was written. Give me 1 second, you guys. And that was the day I searched it. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to find This article was written by Jason Mesner, and it was published on October 20th of 2023. And the title of this article reads, "Did you pick up your law license at Walmart? Sentencing in gun case veers into lawyer's conduct. Funds allegedly stolen from girl raped by monk." And the article reads, "The federal charges filed against Terry Ferguson in 2018 seem pretty straightforward. Undercover federal agents allegedly caught him selling cocaine and arranging the sale of guns from his popular food truck. But the case dragged on for 5 years, bogged down by guilty pleas entered and withdrawn, a trial demanded and canceled, and allegations of entrapment, illegal searches, and witness intimidation." Now, remember I told you, Bo Brindley represents the uncle in this case. Okay. Now things have taken a truly bizarre twist, as prosecutors revealed on the eve of his sentencing that Ferguson was under investigation for allegedly burning through much of a $1.2 million settlement his niece won from a Buddhist temple in Chicago after she was raped and impregnated by a monk when she was underage. What's more, law enforcement reports made public last week shows the investigation into the stolen funds was also focused on Ferguson's criminal defense lawyer, Bo Brindley, a controversial Chicago attorney who'd also represented Ferguson's niece in her civil case. After Ferguson's arrest in the gun and drug case in October 2018, he was asked by agents with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives about potentially cooperating with investigators, including against Brindley, court records show. When asked if he believed he had Brindley dead to rights on criminal conduct, Ferguson allegedly replied, "I believe I do." 2 weeks later, The same agent interviewed Ferguson's niece, who by then was an adult living in Northwest Indiana. They showed her evidence that Ferguson had spent her hundreds of thousands of dollars in her settlement to buy a big house in southwest suburban Willowbrook, pay off credit cards, and give cash to an associate, according to the ATF report. According to the papers, the interview ended with agents telling her to get a new attorney to investigate the possible crime. When one of the agents later texted her for the new attorney's contact information, the niece allegedly responded, "My lawyer is Bo Brindley. I have nothing to say." She texted, according to the report, "Contact him. I have talked to him. I gave him your number." Ferguson never followed through with any incriminating information on Brindley or anyone else. Brindley, meanwhile, has alleged in court filings that it was the ATF agent who lied and threatened Ferguson's niece to get her to cooperate. The agent kept up the harassment even after she told them they were wrong about Ferguson and trusted uncle who always gave her money when she asked, Brindley said. Brindley had planned to call the niece to testify at Ferguson's sentencing Thursday in a bid to show that the lead agent, Christopher Labno, victimized a psychologically damaged young woman in order to satisfy his personal vendetta against Ferguson. But in a last-minute filing before the hearing, Brindley said the niece was too frightened of Labno to take the witness stand, and he instead submitted a lengthy affidavit denying much of what was in the AFT report. Brindley also filed affidavits from Ferguson's son, alleging Labno had harassed them too, and that they also were too scared to testify against him in open court. When U.S. District Judge Matthew Kennelly took the bench Thursday and learned that Ferguson's sons were sitting in the gallery, he asked Brindley what was preventing them from walking the 30 feet to the witness stand and testifying. The judge also asked if the relatives were aware the affidavit would be publicly filed, when Brindley said they apparently did not know. Kennelly cut him off. "What in the God's name were you thinking?" Kennelly asked. "Did you just pick up your law license at Walmart this morning?" You know I didn't, Your Honor," Brindley started to respond. Kennelly continued, I'm trying to understand the level of stupidity here." The sentencing hearing lasted for 6 hours Thursday, and it's scheduled to conclude Friday after Labno takes the witness stand. According to court records, Ferguson's niece was just 13 when she was approached in a southwest side park near her home by Camnong Boa-Ubol, a monk at the nearby Wat Dharmaram Temple on West 75th Street. Dressed in the orange robes of the order, Boa offered to pay her if she swept up around the outside of the temple, records show. The monk's overtures became sexual on the girl's second visit to the temple. Over the next 2 years, Boa fondled and raped her repeatedly in a trailer on the temple grounds. According to court records, he paid the victim more money to keep quiet about it and threatened to kill her relatives if she spoke of the abuse. The assault and threats continued until the victim became pregnant in late 1999. Records show she said nothing to her family about the temple or the monk, claiming instead that the baby was the result of her having been raped by a masked stranger in the park. She gave birth in 2000 to a daughter with disabilities. It wasn't until years later that she first confided in Ferguson, the uncle who has control of this money, what actually happened. She told investigators, this is what she told the investigators before she consulted Bo Brindley. Listen, she told investigators Ferguson was like a father figure to her, and that it was his idea to start looking for lawyers and file a lawsuit, which she was initially reluctant to do. Brindley filed the suit against Boa and the temple in September of 2010, listing the plaintiff as Jane Doe. In 2011, the Tribune reported that Boa, then 61, had faced similar accusations years earlier and was not only allowed to stay on as a practicing monk, he was still interacting with children at a temple in California. Survivor groups and other activists held demonstrations outside the Wat Damaram temple calling for justice. Boa, who by that time had fled to Alaska and was working as a dishwasher, was charged in 2012 with multiple counts of aggravated criminal sexual assault and extradited back to Chicago. He pled guilty the next year and was sentenced to 15 years in state prison. Meanwhile, Brindley referred the niece's lawsuit to another law firm for a fee in 2012, a common practice in the civil courts. The case was settled by the temple in September 2014 for just over $1.2 million, with the temple admitting no wrongdoing according to Cook County court records. The first check was dispersed to Ferguson just weeks after Brindley's law office in the Monadnock building across from the federal courthouse was raided by the FBI as part of an unrelated investigation, leading to Brindley's indictment on charges of soliciting perjury from clients. Brindley's law license and reputation was spared a year later when he was acquitted in a bench trial of all charges. After he was acquitted, Brindley told reporters that he had a new perspective after standing in the shoes of the accused, and that the ordeal would make him a better lawyer. It validates aggressive defenses on behalf of your client and doing everything you can to try to achieve the best results, which is our ethical duty, Brindley told reporters at the time. Brindley's law practice was again thriving in October of 2018 when the investigation into Ferguson culminated with a raid on his home on Sunset Road in Willowbrook, where agents allegedly found large sums of cash, jewelry, and other valuables. On November 15th of 2018, 2 weeks after Ferguson was charged, Labno and another ATF agent interviewed the niece at the Department of Children's Services in Gary, where she'd been talking to caseworkers about her financial struggles. Now listen, I'm going to read that again. On November 15th, 2018, 2 weeks after Ferguson was charged, Labno and another ATF agent interviewed Denise at the Department of Children's Services in Gary, where she'd been talking to caseworkers about her financial struggles. This girl had a $1.2 million settlement awarded to her by a Buddhist temple, but she is at the Department of Children's Services, and I believe the reason why, based off of some information that I looked into, that the reason why was because something must have happened with one of her kids. I don't know if it was the kid that was the product of the Buddhist monk, or she has another kid, but some incident must have happened. Something got reported. And so this is how she ends up having to have this conversation. And so she's talking to them, and these agents, Lagno, who was involved in the criminal case against Terry Ferguson, and another ATF agent, they interview her because through their investigation, are already investigating about this money, him stealing this money from her, right? So according to a report of the interview, the federal agent told her point blank they believed her uncle had already stolen $630,000 of her settlement money and asked whether she was aware of the amount that was missing. The niece at first, now get this is before she has a conversation with Bo, and she's talking to them at the Department of Children and Family Service without any legal advice. She is talking to these agents about her money and her money being missing. And this is what she says. The niece at first said she had been told by her uncle and his lawyer, who was also initially her lawyer, who then referred her to another firm in order to handle the $1.2 million settlement. And I hope everybody is seeing these lines being drawn, okay? The niece, let's read that again. The niece at first said she had been told by her uncle and his lawyer that if she discussed the money or the settlement, that she could go to jail, the report said. She told them she was okay at first with Ferguson controlling the money because she felt like she would blow it on useless things. In fact, she said, They had formed an agreement signed in the presence of a notary that she was to receive a house, a car, a $10,000 shopping spree for her kids, and a trip to Disney World. Ferguson was to keep the rest of the money for her when she needed it, according to the report of the interview. According to the report, Ferguson received yearly checks every September, including an initial payment. Now, listen, Ferguson received checks. According to the report, Ferguson received yearly checks every September, including an initial payment of $395,517 on September 4th of 2024, which he deposited into his bank account in Bridgeview. Within days, he had used it to buy a four-bedroom home, a four-bedroom, 2,600 square foot home on Sunset Road in his wife's name, according to the report. Over the next several years, Ferguson used more of the settlement funds to make large payments to his personal credit cards and buy a $50,000 home in Gary, the report stated. During the interview, Ferguson's niece acknowledged her uncle had occasionally given her money over the years when she asked. She also got the shopping spree, but not the house, car, or trip. Instead, she was struggling to make rent on her home in Gary and was behind on her car payment for her used Kia, according to the report of her interview. She stated that every time her kids see Ferguson, they ask him when he is taking them to Disney World. But Ferguson has never followed through with the agreement, the report stated. Agents then showed her a photo posted to Facebook by another Ferguson relative from a year earlier. It showed Ferguson, his ex-wife, 7 of his 10 children, 5 grandchildren, and 2 other family members standing with Mickey Mouse in a castle at Disney World, the report stated. The niece said she had no idea they'd taken this trip, according to the report. Agents should note Ferguson's niece became visibly upset, the report stated, again explaining that her children had never been to Disney World despite Ferguson's promises and her settlement money. In court filing, Brindley has accused Labneau of duping Ferguson's niece into the interview by having child services lead her to believe she had to appear to discuss the custody of her children. When she got there in a state of anxious concern, she was put in a room with Labneau and another agent. Brindley said they tried to get her to say that her uncle had mishandled the settlement money related to her molestation by a Buddhist monk and that he had somehow stolen from her. She refused. In her affidavit filed by Brindley late Wednesday, the niece stated that Ferguson has been one of the greatest sources of support and that he and Brindley fought for years to get justice for her in court. She said she tried to tell this to Labneau, but he kept pressuring her to implicate Ferguson. I told him I wanted to have my lawyer present, the affidavit stated. He asked who it was and said, I hope it's not that piece of expletive Bo Brindley. The affidavit stated she was terrified by the experience. Once she was allowed to leave, she immediately called Ferguson and talked to Brindley. I think he called Labneau to get him to leave me alone, she said. Recently, as the case neared sentencing, Brindley accused Labneau of improperly trying to contact Ferguson's niece in another effort to intimidate her and dissuade her from testifying. Prosecutors called the allegation outrageous. Ferguson, 59, pleaded guilty earlier this year to helping arrange the sale of 24 stolen guns from the back of his popular food truck, Chicago's Deli on Wheels. Ferguson admitted in the plea agreement to selling cocaine over a 3-year period beginning in 2016 and also fencing an array of stolen goods from his warehouse in Hickory Hill, including Snap-on tools, deck furniture, lawnmowers, and pallets of dog food. He faces a mandatory minimum of 5 years in prison. Despite the allegations surrounding Ferguson's niece, Brindley has painted Ferguson as a devoted family man who loves and supports his extended family, attending dance competitions and wrestling matches, and continually hosting pool parties and pajama parties and barbecues. The crowning event of every year is a trip to Florida where he goes shark fishing with his sons, Brinley says. And that is the end of the article. You guys, you said, wow, sorry, exactly, Tiz. A bunch of sorry ass motherfuckers and a whole bunch of crooked ass legal work. This is what we are looking at. This is the type of person we are looking at. When she was not speaking to these agents, represented by an attorney, and she was freely speaking to them, she tells them of the financial struggles that she has, how she doesn't have any money, that people could visibly see the financial troubles that she had, what was going on with her. But then when she gets and speaks to Brinley, all of a sudden those statements change. She made a statement to these people that said that she was told by her uncle and his legal counsel that if she ever said anything about the money, that she would go to jail. She doesn't appear in court to testify to the affidavit that Brinley claims to have on file. And then in front of the judge, Brinley presents two affidavits by Ferguson's sons who are present in court, and he says are terrified to come testify, but they are present in court. And he makes these allegations of terror on the behalf of the government against these witnesses that are alleging and who gave him these affidavits. Does any of this ring a bell? Does any of this sound familiar? Listen, you guys, I just wanted to come. I wanted to share that case with you guys. I wanted y'all to hear the details of that case. There was never a criminal prosecution against Bo Brinley. From what we know, there was no ethics complaint filed against Bo Brinley on that case. However, there are 9 counts of ethics complaints filed against Bo Brinley currently that they are waiting to be reviewed by a panel over at the ARDC, where they are making allegations of him keeping monies that he is not due because of work he did not do. They are alleging several other things through that complaint. I read that document, both documents. I read the complaint and Bo Brinley's responses on another video on my channel. You guys can go check that out. But this is the consistency of the behavior in the legal representation of this individual, and this is criminal. If you are about injustice, this is unjust. It is unjust for you to exploit someone who is vulnerable because they are in legal troubles and need representation, and for you to exploit and take their money. That's injustice. That is something that everybody should be angry about. That is something that people should be mad about. And when you see the same patterns of behaviors and activity happening again, it should be a cause of concern. I don't understand all of this, but I guess it's not meant to be understood. Or I understand it. I guess it's just not understood what you're looking at here. On that note, you guys, I got some stuff I got to do today, so I'm about to be out of here. But I just wanted to come to you guys really quick to share that information with you guys, the situation that happened in those cases with those instances. There was never any, like I said, ethics complaint filed. It appears that this niece did have some mental health challenges. There was some type of developmental challenges where someone else did need to oversee, I guess, or direct her life and direct her affairs. And this is how her uncle ends up with access to this money. According to the investigators who went to go talk to Terry Ferguson in jail, when they initially went to go speak with him after he gets arrested on an unrelated matter, they believe that there was some part that Brinley played in his ability to be able to take this money from his niece. And initially, the investigators say that Ferguson told them that he had Brindley, like, he was ready to testify, and then all of a sudden it changed, right? So that's what, there was never anything criminal, never any ethical complaint filed, because the investigators were stopped. They were stopped in their tracks because they no longer had any cooperation from Terry Ferguson. They no longer had any cooperation from Terry Ferguson's niece. So no, there was never anything that was pursued any further as a result of this incident. But I wanted to help bring this to you guys to show a pattern of behavior. This is consistent with a pattern of behavior that this individual has exhibited over a long period of time. And there is a complaint with the ARDC with 9 other complainants who have said similar things that you can access. That's information that is available. And if you are choosing to ignore it, you are ignoring it because you already have a personal agenda that you want to see play out, and you don't give a damn about victims for real. Because every last individual that is listed in that complaint, they are an incarcerated individual who is vulnerable due to their incarceration, and they were exploited by this individual. Now, somebody can help me make that make sense. I'll be glad to entertain the conversation. And on that note, you all have a great day.